The millionaire slammed his briefcase onto the marble counter, rage boiling. Across the kitchen, the elderly black maid stood silently, hands clasped. He pointed at her and yelled, "You're fired! Get out of my house today!" She didn't argue. She simply closed her eyes and began to pray softly. Within seconds, the millionaire froze, unable to move, unable to speak. Her words hit him like thunder. What happened next changed both their lives forever. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from so we can bring more stories like these. Morning in that mansion always started quiet, too quiet for a house that big. Sunlight spilled across the marble floors like it was trying to brighten a place that refused to feel warm. The whole place looked like a museum nobody actually lived in. Clean, polished, perfect, and cold as a bank vault. Upstairs, in a king-sized bed big enough to host a conference call, he lay awake before the alarm even buzzed. He hadn't slept. Again, just rolled around all night with his mind racing like a busted engine at a red light. His name was Derek Hale, 43 years old, CEO of Hale Tech Industries, a man every investor in the city bragged about knowing. Too bad the city didn't know what he looked like behind closed doors. Red-rimmed eyes, a jaw clenched so tight you'd think it was welded shut, a phone glued to his hand like an extra limb. He wasn't tired. He was burnt out, roasted all the way through. The kind of exhausted you don't admit, because somewhere along the climb to the top, you decided admitting pain meant you weren't built for success. And Derek, he lived like that was gospel truth. He finally rolled out of bed, sighing like gravity personally offended him. As he yanked on a fresh shirt, he muttered to himself, "Great. Another day of babysitting grown adults who swear they know what they're doing." He said stuff like that every morning. And every morning, those words tasted a little more like bitterness. The hallway smelled faintly of lavender, mixed with that rich people house scent. Fresh polish, expensive candles, and whatever detergent the housekeeper swore by. He didn't really notice, though. He walked past everything with that CEO tunnel vision, eyes locked on his notifications, scrolling like his life depended on doom scrolling. At the bottom of the stairs, someone was already awake, already working, already moving like the house had a heartbeat again. Miss Evelyn Ward, elderly, black, silver curls tied neatly back, gentle smile, warm eyes, a presence that brought peace the way a warm blanket brings sleep. She'd been with the mansion for years, longer than Derek had even owned it, stayed through storms, through renovations, through every one of his million mood swings. Never yelled, never complained, never forgot anyone's birthday, even though no one ever remembered hers. She was folding towels with that slow, steady patience folks don't even make anymore. The kind that comes from living a life full of hard days and choosing gentleness anyway. When she saw him coming down the stairs, she didn't greet him loud, didn't interrupt his thoughts, just smiled softly and said, "Good mornin', Mr. Hale." He barely nodded, not because he hated her, because he didn't see her, not really. To him, she was part of the house. ... Like the dishwasher, or those automatic lights that flicked on when you stepped into a room. Just there. A background character hired to handle the mess he didn't want to look at. He breezed past her toward the kitchen, scrolling emails, breathing heavy already. Evelyn didn't react. She just went right back to folding, humming something soft under her breath. Some old hymn she probably learned as a girl, a sound that floated through the mansion, like the last surviving bit of kindness. In the kitchen, Derek slapped his phone on the counter so hard it rattled the silverware. 3 missed calls from his COO. 1 message from an investor, barking about numbers. A reminder from his calendar, screaming about a meeting he didn't want to attend. A normal morning, basically. He grabbed his coffee mug like it had personally wronged him, poured the coffee too fast, spilled a little on the counter, cursed under his breath like the world was ending. Then he paced back and forth, ranting to no one but himself. They can't meet a damn deadline to save their lives. These idiots wouldn't survive 5 minutes in my position. Why is everything my responsibility? Why is everyone depending on me? He wasn't asking questions. He was unloading the weight that sat on his chest every damn day. From the hallway, Evelyn peeked in quietly. "Everything okay, dear?" He didn't answer, just waved her off like swatting a mosquito, and still, no judgment from her, no attitude, nothing but patience. His phone buzzed again, and he snatched it up. Another emergency, another fire he had to put out, another mistake someone made overnight that somehow became his problem. His voice shot through the kitchen. "Are you kidding me? How hard is it to follow basic instructions?" He was yelling at the speakerphone. He was yelling at the general universe. Mostly, he was yelling at the reflection of himself in the microwave door. He slammed the coffee mug down, grabbed his laptop, and marched toward his office. Evelyn moved aside gently, giving him space the way someone steps aside for a passing storm. And that was the truth of Derek Hale. He wasn't a man anymore. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't someone living his own life. He was a storm in a tailored suit. Throughout the morning, the mansion played witness to his chaos. He stopped from room to room, juggling calls like grenades. He yelled into devices so often, the smart speakers started lowering their volume automatically. He cursed at spreadsheets like they were alive, and personally plotting against him. And every step he took, Evelyn followed behind, not interfering, not hovering, just quietly putting the house back together. Straightening pillows, dusting shelves, bringing him water he never drank, picking up the things he tossed aside. She moved with this soft wisdom, the kind you can't teach, the kind you earn from decades of watching people burn themselves alive with stress they swear they need to carry. At one point, his mother called. He let it ring. At another point, his CFO sent a long message begging him to tone it down in today's meeting. He rolled his eyes so hard they nearly stuck like that. By 10 a.m., he'd already had 3 arguments, 2 panic attacks he called annoyances, and 1 internal meltdown he blamed on bad Wi-Fi. By noon, he was emotionally done for the day. But the day wasn't done with him. And through all of it, Evelyn stayed steady. She'd pass by with a basket of laundry, nodding kindly. She'd sweep around him without disturbing him. She'd check the oven, stir a pot, wipe a countertop. Always quiet, always present. She never complained, never gave attitude, never let his stress rub off on her. She was the anchor he didn't realize he had, and didn't appreciate it, because in his mind, she was just the maid. Just someone paid to handle his mess. Just a background figure to blame when he couldn't handle his life. He didn't know she prayed for him every morning. He didn't know she kept him from spiraling worse than he already was. He didn't know her presence was the reason the house didn't feel completely hollow. Not yet. Not today. Today, he was too lost in his own storm to see the lighthouse standing right in front of him. By the time early afternoon hit, Derek felt one sneeze away from an explosion. His shoulders were tight, his tone sharp enough to slice steel, and his patience was evaporating right out of his bloodstream. He didn't know it yet, but today, this ordinary, stressful, miserable day, was the beginning of a shift he never saw coming. Because life has a funny way of letting you walk around blind to the people who keep your world steady until the moment you break. And Evelyn Ward, that gentle, patient, wise old woman he barely noticed, she was about to become the one person who would shake the ground beneath him, not by force, not by anger, not by revenge, but by kindness. The kind he'd forgotten existed. The thing about bad days is, they don't knock. They don't clear their throat or slide a polite note under the door. They just walk right in, kick their shoes off on your white carpet, and start messing stuff up. Derek Hale learned that the hard way, before the sun even touched the other side of the sky. His phone buzzed again. Not the someone liked your post kind of buzz. The your world is about to get worse kind. He answered with that clipped, irritated voice he used whenever he expected nonsense, which for him was always. Yeah, what now? On the other end was Greg, his head contract negotiator, voice shaking like he'd stepped into a freezer. Derek, the Benson contract? It's falling through. Derek froze mid-step. Falling through how? Because I swear to God if someone messed up the proposal. The board on their side pulled out. They said your comments during last week's meeting made them uncomfortable partnering with unstable leadership. Their words, not mine. The words hit like someone dropped a brick straight through his spine. Unstable leadership. His tone sharpened. His breathing shortened. And his anger, that thing he always blamed on everything but himself, started boiling. Greg, listen to me. If we lose this deal, half of our Q3 forecast collapses. Fix it. I don't care how. Derek, fix it. He hung up without a goodbye, already pacing the room like he was trying to outrun his own fury. Evelyn, dusting a nearby table, glanced over at him. Not nosy, not nervous, just present. He didn't even see her. 20 minutes later, he stormed outside toward the garage, jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. He needed to get to the office, needed to control something before the day spiraled beyond his grip. He pressed the button to unlock his car. Nothing. Pressed again, still nothing. He stared at the vehicle like it personally betrayed him. Sleek, black, overpriced, a machine that should have started just by sensing his anger. He yanked the door handle. Locked. He muttered curses under his breath, then marched inside for the spare keys he apparently never used and now suddenly needed. When he came back out and tried again, still nothing. His voice shot through the driveway. Are you frickin' kidding me right now? A tiny click came from behind him. Evelyn, holding a basket of freshly dried sheets, paused near the steps. Battery might have died, dear, she said gently. Cold weather does that sometimes. Her voice wasn't judgment. It wasn't even advice. Just a calm statement from someone trying to help. But Derek was already too far into his own head to hear kindness. Why is everything in this house useless? The words weren't for her, but they still landed near her feet like broken glass. She didn't flinch. She didn't snap back. She just nodded softly and went on her way, humming another hymn. Her calm irritated him. Her peace almost felt like an insult when his world was falling apart. After calling a tow truck and yelling at the operator so much the man nearly hung up, Derek ordered a car from a private driver service and stormed back inside to grab documents. Except he couldn't find them. Files he needed for the afternoon investor meeting. The ones he printed last night and placed somewhere. He dug through drawers, ripped open folders, tossed papers across the desk. Panic started crawling up his throat. Then Evelyn stepped softly into the doorway with her laundry basket. "Looking for those papers you left on the patio last night, Mr. Hale?" He snapped around so fast he swore his neck cracked. "No, I'm looking for the documents I printed for today's meeting." Evelyn blinked, then spoke slowly, kindly. "Yes, dear. Those are the same ones. I brought them in early this morning. They're on the counter by the fruit bowl." His face twisted, frustration spilling over. "Why would you move them? Now everything's out of order." Again, she didn't react, didn't defend herself, didn't point out that the papers were actually stacked neatly in the exact order he left them. She simply stood there, steady as a mountain. "I'll leave you to them," she said gently. "Didn't mean to trouble you." But her calm only made him angrier, because deep down, in a place he never looked at, he knew the problem wasn't her. It was him. The driver arrived. Rain started spitting down like the sky was adding its own drama. Derek stormed out the door without grabbing an umbrella, head full of anger, stomach empty, heart pounding. The driver, a friendly middle-aged guy, smiled through the window. "Rough morning, sir? Just drive." The car pulled out of the mansion gate, tires cutting through puddles, raindrops beating against the windshield in sharp little taps. Derek stared out the window, jaw shifting, mind spinning. The city blurred by. Neon signs, coffee shops, people living normal, unpressured lives. All of them looked like aliens to him. He checked his phone, and that's when another bomb dropped. A notification from his assistant. "I'm resigning. Effective immediately. I'm sorry." At first, Derek blinked at the screen like it was lying to him. Then he typed furiously, "This isn't funny. Call me now." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then a message came through. "I can't keep up with your demands anymore. I'm worn out. I hope you get the help you need." Help. He read that word 5 times. A muscle in his cheek twitched. His temples pulsed. He threw the phone onto the seat so hard the driver jumped. "Everything all right, sir?" "Just focus on the road." But even Derek knew he wasn't talking to the driver. He was talking to the universe. By noon, the storm in his head had grown teeth. When he finally reached the office and walked into the meeting room, the board didn't greet him with their usual forced cheeriness. No handshakes, no fake compliments, just stiff faces and stiff voices. The meeting went downhill fast. He raised his voice. They raised theirs. He cut them off. They cut ties. By the end, 2 investors pulled out. Another walked out mid-discussion. One of them looked him straight in the face and said, "Your temper is costing you everything." It hit him harder than he wanted to admit. He stormed out of the building before he could explode again. Thunder rolled across the sky. The rain turned from drizzle to downpour. Perfect. Just perfect. The car ride home felt like being stuck in a pressure cooker with no escape. He didn't talk, didn't breathe right, didn't blink for long stretches. He replayed every moment of the day. The lost contract, the broken car, the assistant quitting, the investor meltdown, and Evelyn, quiet, steady Evelyn, always in the corner of his eye, never asking for anything, never fighting back. He blamed her for things he'd misplaced, blamed her for things she had nothing to do with, blamed her because she was there, and everyone else in his life had the luxury of walking away. The guilt he didn't want to feel, it was there, right under the anger. But he didn't deal with guilt. He drowned it in noise. By the time he pushed open the front door, he was a volcano with legs. Thunder cracked in the distance. His shoes soaked the entryway floor. His shoulders were trembling, not from cold, but from everything he'd refused to process. And there she was, Evelyn, folding laundry by the window again, soft lamplight glowing around her, heck, some sort of quiet halo. She turned her head, smiling the same gentle smile she used every day. "Dinner's warming in the oven, dear." Something snapped. He didn't even think, didn't pause, didn't breathe. He exploded. "I didn't ask for dinner." His voice echoed through the mansion like a hammer strike, loud enough that even he startled himself. But Evelyn, she didn't flinch. She just nodded slowly, turned back to the shirt she was smoothing out, and kept folding. No lecture, no anger, no fear, just patience. The same patience she'd always given him. It should have calmed him. Instead, it made his chest tighten with something M. He walked past her, hands fist clenched, footsteps heavy enough to shake the floor. He didn't know it yet, but the storm inside him had reached its boiling point. And tomorrow? Tomorrow was the day it would finally erupt. Not in the way storms usually destroy, but in a way that would change him forever. The next morning didn't creep in soft. It came crashing through the curtains like it was mad at him too. Derek woke up feeling like he'd been punched in the chest all night. Head pounding, eyes burning, mouth dry. He stared at the ceiling, brain already replaying yesterday like a bad highlight reel. The lost contract, the investors walking, the assistant quitting, him snapping at Evelyn when she said dinner was warming. He remembered her face, not hurt, not offended, just steady. That almost bothered him more than if she'd yelled back. He rolled out of bed with a groan, checked his phone, and immediately got smacked with 3 new problems. An email, a text from his CFO, a message from his PR team. None of them good, all of them urgent. "Of course," he muttered. "Of course it's more." He threw on a shirt, grabbed his phone, and stepped into the hallway. Downstairs, the house was already alive with the quiet sounds of Evelyn's morning routine. Vacuum humming softly, cabinet doors opening and closing, plates clinking gently as she set them out. The house always felt calmer when she moved through it, like the walls themselves relaxed. Not that he'd ever admit that out loud. As he hit the bottom stair, he smelled it. Breakfast. Eggs, toast, maybe grits, some kind of sausage. Something warm, something homemade, something that said, "You're taken care of," in a way he didn't know how to accept. He followed the scent to the kitchen. Evelyn stood at the stove, wearing that same faded cardigan she always wore, stirring something in a pan like she'd been doing it all her life. Her movements were slow, sure, not rushed, old, but not weak. She heard his footsteps and turned her head with that soft smile. "Morning, Mr. Hale." He didn't answer, just grunted, went straight for the coffee machine, stabbing at the buttons like they'd personally cursed him. The machine sputtered to life. His phone buzzed again. He put it on speaker and set it on the counter, rubbing his temples as his CFO's voice filled the kitchen. "Derek, we've got a situation. The rumors from the Benson deal are circulating. People are saying you blew up in the meeting. They're calling you volatile." "Rumors?" Derek snapped. "We don't do rumors, we do results. Well, right now, we don't have either. Derek's jaw clenched. So fix it. It's not that simple. We've lost 2 more small investors overnight. People are nervous. Then tell them to grow up. Business is pressure. Evelyn quietly moved behind him, sliding a plate of food onto the table. Eggs, toast, some fruit, glass of water. She didn't interrupt the call, didn't say a word, just provided. We can't keep pretending this is fine, the CFO said. Your reputation is starting to hit the money, Derek. His fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. My reputation is the reason we have money in the first place. It was, the CFO said quietly. That word hit him like a slap. Was. He snatched the phone off the counter and walked out of the kitchen, pacing through the hallway, arguing, defending, lashing out. His voice rose higher, louder, more heated. He didn't even notice Evelyn watching him as he stalked past the kitchen doorway again. Didn't notice how her eyes softened in worry. Didn't notice, she whispered almost under her breath, Lord, calm that storm in him. He slammed his office door. An hour later, the storm just kept getting worse. He'd argued with his CFO, ignored 2 more calls from his mother, sent 3 emails so harsh he'd probably regret them later, if he ever allowed himself to regret things. By mid-morning, a delivery guy showed up with packages for the house, supplies, groceries, some new tech thing he ordered and forgot about. The front door stayed open a little while as people moved in and out, the gardener, the driver returning keys. A handyman checking a leak. The house wasn't empty anymore. There were eyes, ears, witnesses, and of all days, that was the day his temper chose to fully snap. It started small. He walked into the kitchen, phone in hand, scrolling through emails so aggressive it looked like he was trying to stab the screen. The breakfast Evelyn made for him earlier still sat on the table, untouched. The eggs were cold now. The toast had stiffened. The fruit sat there like a little bright reminder that somebody tried to care about him, and he'd ignored it. Evelyn was sweeping near the stove. Slow, methodical strokes. She looked up as he came in. You didn't get to your breakfast, dear, she said gently. Would you like me to warm it up for you? No. The word came out sharper than he meant. She nodded anyway. All right then. She kept sweeping. The broom made this soft scraping sound on the tile. Over and over, back and forth. He tried to read an email, but the sound kept poking at his brain. Scrape, scrape, scrape. His nerves were already on fire. His mind already overloaded. Every sound felt like one more person asking him for something he didn't have. Scrape, scrape. He squeezed his eyes shut. Can you not do that right now? He said through his teeth. She stopped at once. Of course, Mr. Hale. She leaned the broom gently against the counter. Silence settled in. He should have felt relief. Instead, all the noise in his head screamed louder. His phone buzzed again. PR this time. He answered. Yeah? We've got a blogger posting about your outburst at the Benson meeting. If this gains traction, then shut it down, he snapped. We're trying, but try harder. That's why I pay you. He hung up before they could answer. His chest felt tight. His hands shook. His jaw ached from clenching. There was no more broom sound, no more humming, no more anything. Just him, his breathing, and the quiet. And somehow that felt worse. He turned toward Evelyn without really meaning to. She was folding a dish towel now, slow and precise, like she had no intention of taking up any unnecessary space. Something in him flipped. Maybe it was the frustration. Maybe the fear. Maybe that ugly little voice whispering, "You're losing control of everything." Whatever it was, it grabbed his mouth before his good sense could. "You know what?" he said, voice loud and sharp. ... She looked up, eyebrows softly raised. "Pardon, dear?" "This, you, being here," he said, sweeping his hand around like she was part of the decor. "You're too slow. You move like this house is some retirement lodge. I need efficiency. I need focus. I can't deal with all this old energy." The words came out crueler than he'd even planned. He knew it. He heard it. But he didn't pull them back. Evelyn's eyes flickered, just for a split second. Not hurt, exactly. More like sad for him than for herself. She straightened up, hands resting calmly on the towel. "I see," she said quietly. Footsteps sounded in the hallway, the driver passing through, the gardener coming in to ask about the back gate, the handyman checking the leak near the laundry room. Voices murmured somewhere near the door. He didn't care. His volume rose. "I need people who can keep up. This house is a business, and everything around me has to function at my level. I can't keep being distracted by slow, outdated routines. I don't..." He stopped just long enough to breathe, then said the words that hit the room like a sucker punch. "I'm done with this. You're too slow, too old, and too distracting. You're fired." The way the sentence echoed through the kitchen made even him go quiet. Out in the hallway, the murmuring stopped. The driver paused. The gardener stilled. The handyman froze mid-step. Evelyn didn't look at them. Didn't look anywhere but at him. She held his gaze. Not defiant, not broken, just steady. She slowly set the dish towel down on the counter and rested both hands on the edge for a moment, as if grounding herself. Then she took a deep breath. No trembling lip, no tears, no panic, just air going in, air going out, like she'd been through storms far worse than this and knew how to stand. Silence. To plead. To ask why. She didn't. Instead, she did something he absolutely did not see coming. Her voice came out soft, almost tired, but still warm. "Before I leave," she said gently, "let me pray for you." The air in the kitchen shifted. He frowned, taken off guard. "What?" "You're clearly carrying a storm on your back, child," she said. "Before I walk out that door, I'd like to lift you up to the Lord." He scoffed, the sound ugly and defensive. "I don't need prayers. I need competent people." She hummed softly. "You need both more than you know." He shook his head, disbelief turning into irritation. "Look, I don't have time for spiritual speeches or whatever you think this is. You're fired. That's it." She nodded once. "I heard you the first time." Then before he could say another word, she closed her eyes. Hands folded gently in front of her. Shoulders relaxed. Face calm. And she started praying. Right there, in his kitchen, in front of him, with the front door open and half the staff within earshot. Her voice was low, but it carried. It rolled out of her like something she'd done 1,000 times before, like it wasn't a performance. It was a conversation. "Father God," she began, "I lift up this man to you." Derek felt his throat tighten, for reasons he did not want to analyze. He shifted his weight, tried to look busy, pretended to check his phone, but the screen blurred. Because her words, they weren't sweet fluff. They were scalpel-sharp truths wrapped in kindness. "You see how tired he is?" she whispered. "You see the fear he won't admit. You see how he's trying to hold the whole world together with hands that are already shaken. His jaw flexed. You see the anger he uses to hide his hurt. You know every thought that keeps him up when this big ol' house goes quiet. He swallowed hard. He hadn't told anybody that. Not his board, not his family, not the therapist he hired once and never called B. I ask you, Lord, she continued, don't let his success be the thing that kills his soul. Don't let his money be louder than your peace. That line hit him like a brick to the chest. He flashed back to the nights he sat in the dark office, staring at numbers that kept growing on paper, while something inside him felt emptier than ever. Remind him he's more than his title, more than his temper, more than what these people say about him when he ain't in the room. His eyes stung. He blinked hard. No way. No chance. He wasn't getting emotional over some prayer, but the words kept coming. Touch his mind, she said softly. Quiet that noise that keeps telling him he's alone, when he never has been. He thought of every time he'd ignored her saying, good morning. Every plate of food he'd walked past. Every gentle suggestion he'd brushed off. He thought of how she'd been in this house every day, a presence he could have leaned on, and didn't. Give him rest, Lord, she whispered. Real rest. Not just a vacation, not just a bigger bonus, but that deep rest that lets a man breathe again. His chest rose and fell unevenly. He realized his fists were clenched so tight, his knuckles had gone white. He realized he wasn't breathing right. He realized he couldn't look at her. Her voice stayed calm. And when folks walk away from him 'cause they scared of his storms, she added, don't let him believe that means he's unworthy of love. It just means he needs you to teach him a calmer way. Silence fell. Then gently, in Jesus' name, amen. She opened her eyes. He looked away. For the first time in a long time, he didn't have anything to say. No snappy comeback, no sarcastic remark, because every word she'd spoken felt like she'd read his private thoughts, the ones he never let leave his skull. He felt exposed, not professionally, not publicly, personally. The kind of exposed that made your chest ache and your throat burn and your pride scream, don't let it show. Out in the hallway, the driver slowly stepped back toward the door. The gardener cleared his throat softly and pretended he'd just remembered something outside. The handyman quietly faded toward the laundry room. They'd heard enough. But the real impact wasn't out there. It was right there in that kitchen, in the space between a burnt-out millionaire and the old woman he'd just fired. And then, just as the air grew heavy enough to crush him, just as he opened his mouth, not even sure what might come out, the doorbell rang. A sharp, clear chime cutting straight through the moment like a knife through glass. The doorbell cut through the tension like a slap. Ding dong! Derek blinked, dragged out of his own head for a second. For a moment, nobody moved. Not him, not Evelyn, not the house staff, still hovering just out of sight in the hallway. Ding dong! The second chime sounded almost impatient. Evelyn gave a small exhale, like she'd just finished something sacred, and now life was knocking again. I'll get it, she said softly. Derek almost told her, no, I'll handle it, you're... But the word fired still hung in the air between them like smoke, and it stuck in his throat. So he just stepped back, letting her walk past him. Her footsteps were slow, but steady, as she crossed the polished floor toward the front door. The house suddenly felt huge, every sound echoing, the shuffle of her shoes, the click of the lock, the soft creak as she pulled the door open. From the kitchen, Derek could only see part of the entryway, but he heard the voice at the door, clear as day. Male, firm, professional. Good morning, ma'am. Is Miss Evelyn Ward here? Derek stiffened. His mind jumped straight to worst-case scenarios in half a second. A cop at his door asking for his maid. His stomach dropped. Oh, great. What now? Legal trouble? Some family drama? Is this gonna somehow blow back on me, too? He stepped out of the kitchen, the need for control pulling him forward like a rope around his chest. Evelyn stood by the open door, looking up at the man on the porch. He wore a dark blue police uniform, badge shining slightly in the light, hat tucked under his arm out of respect. He had warm brown skin, a short, neat beard, and those tired but kind eyes of someone who'd seen a lot and was still trying to do good anyway. The name tag on his chest read, J. Ellis. Evelyn blinked slowly, then smiled. I'm Miss Ward, she said, voice calm. What can I do for you, officer? Derek's pulse kicked up. He stepped closer, not wanting to look nosy but absolutely needing to know what was going on. Is there a problem? He cut in, the edge in his tone automatic. The officer glanced at him, still polite. No problem, sir, he said. Just delivering something important. He turned back to Evelyn, posture softening. Ma'am, the community center asked me to bring this to you personally. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a large sealed envelope, thick, official-looking, cream-colored, with a gold city seal stamped on the front. He held it out with both hands, like it was something that mattered. They didn't want it getting lost in the mail, he added with a small smile. Said you deserve to see it, right? Evelyn looked genuinely confused. Oh, well, that's kind of them. Her hands shook very slightly as she took the envelope. Not from fear, from age, from surprise. Derek stared at the seal. His brain tried to categorize it. Legal notice? Fine? Summons? Some charity junk? But the gold emblem didn't look like trouble. It looked ceremonial. The officer rocked back on his heels a little, watching her. You mind if I wait a second, ma'am? He asked. They told me I could head out, but truth be told, I kinda wanted to see your face when you opened it. Evelyn chuckled softly, a little embarrassed. Lord, I hope that's a good thing. Yes, ma'am, he said. I'd say so. Derek folded his arms across his chest, irritation fighting with curiosity. He didn't like not knowing what was happening in his own house. What is this exactly? He asked. Officer Ellis glanced at him again. You, Mr. Hale? Then you're about to learn something real important about the woman working under your roof. That sentence landed heavy. Derek's brows pulled together. He watched as Evelyn slid a wrinkled fingertip under the envelope flap and tore it open carefully, like she didn't want to ruin anything that might need to be kept. She pulled out the first page, a thick, formal sheet with printed text and a bold heading at the top. Her mouth parted slightly. Her eyes moved quickly, scaled. The silence in the entryway stretched. What is it? Derek asked, this time softer. She swallowed. She blinked, laughed breathlessly, like she didn't quite believe it herself. It's a nomination. Officer Ellis nodded, smiling fuller now. Citywide Humanitarian Award, he said. Only hand those out to a handful of folks every year. Evelyn's voice trembled just a little. But I don't... Her fingers fumbled with the rest of the pages, and more papers slipped out. A stack of letters, all held together by a paperclip, handwritten, typed, some with colorful crayon at the bottom, some with shaky cursive. She held them like they were fragile. These are from the families, Officer Ellis explained. People you helped over the years, kids you worked with, folks from the shelter. Derek blinked. Shelter? The officer turned to him. The hurricane shelter on Oakview 3 years back, he said. When the flood took out half the lower district, power outages, Folks stranded? That shelter would have fallen apart without her. He nodded toward Evelyn. She ran that place for 3 straight days and nights. Barely slept 2 hours. Organized food, kept the kids calm, sat with people when they thought they'd lost everything. We had volunteers, sure, but she was the backbone. Derek stared at Evelyn like he'd never seen her before. Shelter, hurricane, backbone. None of that fit the neat little box he'd shoved her into in his mind. You're too slow. You're too old. You're fired. He heard his own words echo back at him and suddenly hated their sound. Evelyn's eyes moved over one of the letters. Her lips pressed together, then trembled as she read. "This one's from the Cooper kids," Officer Ellis said gently. "Their daddy wrote it. Said you held his youngest for 3 hours straight while they were waiting on news about their mom at the hospital. Said you prayed with him when he thought he was going to break." She sniffed, brushing away a tear with the back of her hand. "I just did what needed doing," she murmured. "You did more than that, ma'am," the officer said. "You saved people's sanity when everything went sideways. That matters." Derek looked at the letters like they were written in another language. He felt off balance, like someone had picked up the floor he stood on and tilted it 30 degrees. "I didn't know you volunteered," he said slowly. Evelyn looked at him, eyes kind instead of accusing. "You never asked, dear." The honesty of it hit him harder than a shouted accusation ever could have. He opened his mouth, closed it. For once in his life, the CEO of Hailtech, man with a word for everything, had no. Officer Ellis reached into another pocket, pulling out a single sheet with a glossy finish, a flyer. He handed it to Derek. "Ceremonies next month at City Hall," he said. "Thought you might want to know. Miss Ward here's being honored in front of the whole council." The flyer had her name printed in bold letters near the bottom. Honoring local hero, Miss Evelyn Ward. Under it was a small photo. Evelyn at the shelter, hair wrapped in a scarf, face shiny with sweat. A bunch of kids crowded around her, clinging, smiling, leaning into her like she was the safest person in the building. Something twisted in Derek's chest, hard enough to make him physically shift his weight. He'd known her for years. She'd been in his home almost every day, and he'd never seen this picture. Never knew this part of her life existed. Officer Ellis sighed softly, like he'd seen this exact kind of situation more than once. "Funny thing about folks like her," he said, glancing between them. "They'll work whole lifetimes in the shadows, and the people closest to them won't even know what kind of giant they got standing in their living room." His words weren't mean. They were just true. Uncomfortably true. Evelyn folded the nomination letter carefully, smoothing the crease like it was something precious she planned on keeping for a long time. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't gotta say much, ma'am," Officer Ellis replied. "Whole lot of people already spoke for you." He nodded toward the stack of letters in her hand. "You got kids in this town who write your name when their teachers ask who their hero is. You got elders who say they only stuck around 'cause you wouldn't let them give up when the water was rising. You got folks with pictures of you on their fridge, right next to their kids' honor roll certificates." He chuckled. "You ain't just a maid in the city, Miss Ward. You're a pillar." That word landed like a bell toll. Pillar. Derek's mind raced back through moments, searching for signs he'd missed. The way she always made sure the TV was on the news when storms rolled in. Not out of nosiness, but habit. The way she'd disappear early some weekends, saying, "Got some people I need to check on, dear." The way she always carried this quiet knowing, like she'd seen more than she ever talked about. He thought she'd just cleaned up his life. Turns out she'd been out there helping hold other people's together. This town loves her, Officer Ellis added quietly. Some of 'em wouldn't be here without her. Silence settled again, not empty this time, but heavy with realization. Derek suddenly became hyper-aware of how he'd spoken to her. Too slow, too old, too distracting. He'd tossed those labels at a woman strangers called hero and backbone and pillar. He swallowed, throat dry. "I didn't know," he said, the words tasting small. Evelyn shrugged softly, smile gentle. "You been busy, Mr. Hale," she said. "Busy trying to hold on to your world. Easy to miss what's going on in other people's." No bitterness, no dig, just truth, given gently, like she didn't want to bruise him with it. Officer Ellis nodded toward the stack of letters again. "I gotta head back to the station," he said, tipping his head respectfully. "But ma'am, don't you try talking yourself out of going to that ceremony, you hear? The city owes you that moment." She laughed, wiping at her cheeks. "I'll be there, officer. Lord willin'." "Good." He put his hat back on and looked at Derek one last time. There was something in his eyes, not accusation exactly, but a challenge. Like he was silently asking, "You see her now? You really see her?" Then he stepped back onto the porch and headed down the steps, leaving the front door open for a breeze that suddenly felt too cool on Derek's skin. The house stayed quiet for a long beat. Evelyn held that envelope to her chest, eyes closed for just a second, whispering something under her breath. Probably a thank you to God only she and the walls could hear. Derek stared at her, the realization finally crashing all the way in. He'd lived with a hero, a woman the whole city respected, a woman with a story that stretched way beyond his mansion, and he hadn't even bothered to ask who she was. He felt small, not because she made him feel that way. She hadn't, because the truth finally did. And somewhere deep in his chest, underneath the ego and the exhaustion and the temper and the pride, guilt started to rise like a tide he couldn't stop. Guilt didn't hit him all at once. It didn't crash like a car wreck. It seeped in, slow, sticky, uncomfortable, like water leaking under a door you thought was sealed. After Officer Ellis left, the house went quiet again. Too quiet. No police radio echo, no distant city noise, just the faint hum of the AC and the ticking of that oversized wall clock Derek had bought from some designer catalog. Evelyn stood there in the entryway a moment longer, clutching the envelope to her chest, her eyes watery but bright. She looked proud and humbled at the same time, like she wasn't used to people making a big deal about her, but the love felt good anyway. Derek didn't know what to do with any of this. He shifted his weight, hands in his pockets, staring at her like she'd suddenly turned into a completely different person. Hero, backbone, pillar, and he'd told her she was too old, too slow, too distracting. She glanced his way and gave him a small smile, gentle as always. "Well," she said softly, voice a little shaky, "that was something, wasn't it?" He opened his mouth. What was he supposed to say? "Wow, congrats. Sorry I fired you 10 minutes before a cop showed up to call you a hero?" His pride tried to speak first. "I didn't realize you were involved in all that," he muttered, voice low. "Life's long," she replied. "You pick up a few things along the way." She brushed a hand over the letters, eyes softening again. "Didn't think anybody was paying attention like that, though." She chuckled lightly. "God's full of surprises." He couldn't tell if that line was for her or for him. Maybe both. He felt the inside of his chest tighten. Evelyn, Before he could finish, before he could make sense of the sentence trying to crawl out of his throat, her eyes flicked past his shoulder toward the kitchen. Breakfast dishes. her broom leaning on the counter, the space where he'd stood and told her to get out of his life. She let out a quiet breath. "We can talk in a minute, dear," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "Let me finish what I started." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Her gaze met his steady. "I was praying for you when that bell rang," she reminded him. "I'd like to finish." He just stared at her. All this, the cop, the letters, the nomination, and she still wanted to pray? For him? Something in him wanted to protest, to say, "I don't need that. I need strategy, money, solutions, not religious comfort." But every time he tried to form the argument, he kept hearing her earlier words, and right behind that, Officer Ellis's voice. "You got a giant standing in your living room." His shoulders sagged a little, just enough for someone paying attention to catch it. Evelyn was always paying attention. She nodded toward the kitchen. "Come on," she said softly. "Storm's already here. Might as well let God in the house while it's blowing." He didn't know why he followed her, but he did. Back in the kitchen, nothing had changed physically. Same counters, same cold plate of eggs, same broom against the counter. But the air felt heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. Evelyn set the envelope and letters carefully on the table, like they were made of glass. Then she turned to him. "You can sit," she suggested, nodding to the chair. He almost argued out of habit. "No, I'm fine. I don't need to sit." But his body betrayed him. His feet moved on their own. He sank into the chair like gravity had just doubled. He didn't realize how tired he was until he stopped pretending he wasn't. Evelyn rested one hand on the back of the opposite chair, looking at him the way a doctor might study a patient, not with judgment, but concern. "You don't gotta close your eyes or nothing," she said. "You don't even gotta believe the way I do. Just let me say what I need to say over you. Then you can go right back to yelling at whoever you want." A tiny corner of his mouth twitched. There it was, that little thread of humor she always slipped in at exactly the right time. He didn't smile, but he also didn't say no. That was enough for her. She bowed her head slightly, hands folding again. This time, when she started praying, he didn't look away. He watched her, the lines in her face, the way her lips moved, the way her whole posture softened, like she was leaning on someone she trusted more than gravity. "Lord," she murmured, voice low and steady, "I wasn't finished earlier. You know that. So I'm back." He exhaled through his nose, something like a humorless laugh catching there. "This man here," she continued, "he's been running from peace so long, he don't remember what it feels like." That sentence hit him right in the chest. Yeah, she was talking about him. And yeah, she was dead on. "He thinks if he stops pushing, it's all gonna fall apart," she said. "He thinks if he ain't controlling every little thing, it means he's failing." His fingers flexed against the table. "But you know better," she whispered. "You know he's just scared. Scared of losing what he built. Scared of being seen as weak. Scared," she paused, swallowing, "of being left like he was before." He froze. That last one felt like she'd pulled it straight from somewhere he kept locked up tight. She didn't know about his father. Didn't know he'd bailed when Derek was 16. Didn't know about the nights teenage him had listened to his mom cry behind a closed door and sworn, "I'll never be that powerless again." He never told her that, but here she was, speaking right into it. "So I'm asking you, Lord," she said quietly, "don't let him keep hiding behind that anger. Don't let rage be the only language he knows. 'Cause anger," she opened her eyes and looked at him fully now, "anger is eating him alive, son." The last word wasn't to God. It was to him. "Son, It slipped out of her so natural, like it'd been waiting on her tongue for years. He felt something crack inside. She turned her gaze slightly upward again. "Soften him," she asked. "Not his mind sharp enough. Soften that heart. Remind him he's not alone in this big ol' house. Remind him he's allowed to be tired without being a failure. Remind him he don't have to tear people down just 'cause he's scared of falling himself." Her words weren't fancy. They weren't churchy. They were plain, real. They were cutting him open in ways no shareholder meeting ever could. "And when this storm hits full force, and you know it's coming," she said, "don't let it drown him. Let it wash away what needs to go. Let it shake loose what needs shaken. But don't let it destroy him, Lord. He's your child too, even if he forgot that part." His vision blurred. He blinked hard. He was not about to cry over this. "No, absolutely not." "In Jesus' name," she said softly. "Amen." She lifted her head, eyes searching his face. For a second, he couldn't speak. His throat felt too tight, like something was stuck there that wasn't meant to be. He finally forced out, "Why? Why do you care this much?" It came out rough, more like a demand than a question, but underneath it was genuine confusion. Real, raw confusion. Evelyn's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Because God cared that much about me when I was raising hell in my younger days," she said. "I'd be a real ungrateful woman if I didn't pass that love along." He stared at her. "I fired you," he said quietly, almost like he needed to remind her. "I talked to you like you were beneath him, disposable, in his way." He couldn't even finish the sentence. Her eyes softened. "You talk to me like a hurt man with too much power and not enough rest," she corrected gently. "I've been around long enough to know the difference." He swallowed again. His chest ached like he'd been running for miles. Before he could respond, before he could even begin to unpack what she just said, his phone rang. Loud, sharp, angry. The ringtone he'd set for board-level calls. The storm hit. The name on the screen. Board chair, Haltech. He glanced at Evelyn, then answered, forcing his voice into that controlled CEO mode. "Yeah, this is Derek." No hello, no greeting. A hard sigh came through the line. "We need to talk. Now." He walked a few steps away, but not far. Somehow, he didn't want to leave the kitchen. Didn't want to walk away from the only steady thing in the house. "What's going on?" he asked. "We've lost 3 more private investors since last night," the chair said. "Word about your behavioral instability is spreading." He winced. Instability. "We are spinning out, Derek," the chair continued. "Benson's collapse was bad enough. Now we've got blogs dragging your name, anonymous staff quotes about your temper, and 2 major clients asking for reassurance you're still fit to lead." He felt heat crawl up his neck. "So reassure them," he snapped. "It's not that simple," the chair shot back. "People don't want reassurance. They want proof. And right now, the proof says you're an unpredictable liability." The word landed like a slap. Liability. His hand tightened around the phone. "I built this company," he said, voice low and dangerous. "From nothing. I put my life into it." "No one's denying that," the chair answered. "But the same drive that built it is now threatening to burn it to the ground. You can't keep screaming at executives, humiliating team leads, and blowing up in front of partners. Oh, so now everybody's feelings are more important than the business?" He spit, his volume rising. "Their feelings control their money," the chair said flatly. "And their money keeps us alive. You want a translation? Your temper is directly costing us millions." He couldn't breathe right. The room spun just a little. "What are you saying?" he asked. The silence on the other end dragged for a second too long. I'm saying the board is considering a vote, the chair said finally. If this continues, they'll move to remove you as CEO. It felt like the floor disappeared under him. Remove you. There it was, the thing he'd feared in nightmares, but never believed anyone would actually say out loud. You can't be... This isn't a threat, the chair cut in. It's a warning, a window. You either get this under control immediately, or they'll do what they think is necessary to protect the company. Derek's voice dropped, rough and ragged. This company is me. It's more than you now, the chair replied, and that's the problem. You don't see that. He shut his eyes. The storm he'd been ignoring had finally arrived, tearing up everything he tied his identity to. We'll talk again in 48 hours, the chair said. You've got that long to show some signs of change. Start with the way you treat people. Or there may not be a place for you at the next board meeting. The line went dead. He stood there, phone still pressed to his ear, long after the call ended. He slowly lowered it, staring at nowhere. 48 hours. He'd faced hostile takeovers, bad quarters, lawsuits. He'd always found some aggressive way to attack the problem. But there was no one to sue here, no one to outwork, no enemy to crush. The enemy was him. His breathing hitched. His chest felt like someone was sitting on it. He dropped into the chair across from Evelyn, like his legs had given out. She didn't rush him, didn't pepper him with questions, didn't say, "I told you so." She just waited. Finally, he rasped, "I might lose it." She tilted her head. "The company?" He shook his head, swallowing hard. "Everything." The word fell out of him, heavy, bare, honest. For the first time in front of another human being, he didn't sound like a CEO. He sounded like a scared man. Evelyn moved closer, pulling out the chair next to him and sitting down. Old joints, careful movements, no rush. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Her palm was warm, solid, real. Anger is eating you. "You alive, son," she said again, her voice softer now. "It's chewing up your peace, your relationships, your chances, and now it's coming for your work, too." He didn't argue this time. He couldn't. His eyes burned hot. "I don't know how to be any other way," he admitted, voice cracking. "I don't know how to slow down or be soft or just..." His throat closed. Silence swallowed the end of the sentence. She squeezed his shoulder gently. "That's where it starts," she murmured. "Not with you fixin' everybody else. Not with you chasing more deals. It starts with you letting yourself be human, tired, scared, in need of help." He let out a shuddered breath. No board member ever told him that. They told him to be strong, to perform, to deliver. Evelyn told him to be human. For the first time in a long time, he listened. Really listened. No defense, no counterattack, just quiet acceptance of a truth he'd been running from. The storm had hit, and instead of trying to scream over it, he finally let himself feel the rain.